responder or something,
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, so I got
EMT.
it through the police department. So
Okay.
yeah, I was put in that tier, so I was pretty excited.
Wow.
Yeah, good for you.
That's great.
Because the
That's
rest
great.
of all
So
us.
the second one might be a doozy, but we'll wait. So I get that February 13th, so we'll see. Yeah.
Well, some of us old people over 65 are still waiting for the call.
I know.
But it's okay because if you have to call the ambulance, she'll pick up the phone, so it's okay.
That's it. Yeah, it's a good person to know.
Right.
Right.
Okay, guys. Well, since we've got another meeting to make sure that we make for all of our planning and park folks, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Tuesday, January 26th of Economic Development. Ms. Kirkpatrick, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Chair Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Bartolino,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember McCune, Councilmember Nyhan,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxie.
Here.
Did I say your name right?
Yes, ma'am, like taxi with a J.
Okay. Okay, all accounted for.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion on the floor to approve the minutes? Made by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. Do we have any amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain?
I'll abstain. I wasn't present.
Pardon?
I abstained. Crystal abstained.
Okay, Crystal
I wasn't
abstained.
present at that meeting. Yeah.
Okay, I think Carla's got that. Do we have anyone attending from the public that would like to participate at this time?
Madam Chair, there are no members of the public here tonight.
Moving on, we have 3 ready for action items. Julian, would you introduce the tourism campaign update, please?
Michelle, I appreciate it, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I provided for you today some information regarding the new proposed Visit Wildwood tourism campaign. Back at the committee meeting in September, Chair Edens had brought forward a request to develop a new tourism effort for the city, which she had identified as quote unquote Visit Wildwood. This was intended to be a dual effort piece, both in a potential printed flyer as well as a online component on the city's webpage. We had extensive discussion in September about creating our own new standalone website with a different .com and an outside consultant creating it. Ultimately, we decided to just create a new page on our existing website to house all that same information. And we also identified during that meeting in September that in addition to the website, that we should have a very simple one-page flyer that we can create in-house, that we can update regularly over time, that we can print without having to outsource it to a professional printing company that identifies much of the information that's included on the website. Chair Edens can talk about it, but this originated from her interactions with many of the vendors at past city events, Celebrate Wildwood, art festivals, where the vendors may have not been from Wildwood themselves and did not necessarily know the local attractions, things to do, places to stay, where to go. And instead of trying to find that information on a website or using other methods, the goal, the desire was to create a single source of information, not necessarily recreating the wheel or creating any information that doesn't already exist in other locations, but bringing all the information together in one common source, whether it be on the website and in a printed piece. The direction from that meeting in September was to develop that information, pull together a new landing page on the website for this new tourism effort, and also develop a draft printed piece for review by the committee. Given all the other work that all of us are doing and the time it took to develop some of this information, the committee gave us until this meeting in January to pull that information together and present it to the committee for discussion. So with that, there are 2 items that I've included in the packet today. Behind the introductory memo, which includes a link to the website, is a first draft go at the printed piece, which is a simple one-page flyer, as we discussed, with some recommendation from the committee in September, and also speaking with Chair Edens from her initial idea on this topic, as far as places to stay, things to do, places to eat and drink, and also linking back to the more expansive information on the website. This was that first effort at pulling that information together. I did consult with several individuals from the Department of Planning and Parks as well on this matter, just as far as verbiage, formatting, content, just to get another set of eyes and ears on this document as well. All of this information is available on the website, both in different locations, but also on the new landing page for the tourism effort. So this is intended to be an abbreviated version of that information that can be distributed to members of the public that we can keep at the hotel at City Hall, that can be handed out to event attendees and vendors at different city events, and other types of uses such as that. And we can go into more detail on each of these. And the last item, which I just included for the benefit of the committee on the last page, is just a screenshot of that landing page on the city website. We created a redirect, so the website is housed at cityofwildwood.com/tourism. That's a direct link that takes you to this page directly. We could, at the committee's request, create our own new .com just for Visit Wildwood or something like that, and an additional cost. But for the time being, for the purpose of this review, we just put it at an easy link at cityofwildwood.com tourism. We can go through each of these items for the committee's review. I did, for at least for the review of the website component, want to share the screen so we can put it up on everybody's Zoom window so we can take a little bit closer look at it. If everybody has any questions or comments about the content, the layout, or any of the components located within. I did speak to Chair Edens a little bit earlier this afternoon about this item. I know she had some comments. I did get an email from Councilmember Clark as well with additional comments of hers. So I'd be happy to either go through each of those or answer any questions from the committee at this time.
Let's do this, Julian. Let's go through any comments or editorial changes on the printed document, and then let's share the screen if afterwards for the website version. I'll start out, and then I've got Dave Bertolino on the list, and I believe I saw an additional hand, Councilmember Dodwell. A couple of things that I noticed is I recommended reordering the shops that are listed by street number followed by street. So essentially starting with Clayton Road, et cetera, by alphabetical order. One, I feel like if you're driving Old Manchester and looking at different stores, perhaps that's helpful. Two, it perhaps would let us lead with some of our stronger assets as well. I would also recommend making the parks and trails items under attractions less specific, because we do have, in addition to our wonderful city parks, Rockwood Reservations, Babbler, so, recreational parks that extend beyond what the city owns. I think a general asterisk could be helpful under this section, reminding people to look back at the website for updated information, certainly special entertainment events as well. I think it would be helpful under things to do to kind of work in what HPC has worked on over the years, referring people to that driving map that has all of the historic markers and locations. I do think that that's something reasonable for someone to do. And I believe that was what I caught. So Councilmember Bertolino. And if we could get a motion on the floor to approve as amended, that would be great to gear instruction. Yes.
I'll make that motion, and I'd like to go ahead and talk about it.
Okay, can we get a second
I'll
on the
second.
floor? Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councilmember Dodwell.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren, and appreciate your comments. And Julian, thanks for all your efforts on this. Two comments. One is, this sounds really petty, but Table 3 is no longer in business, and I think it's a little bit of false advertising to to show that beautiful setting and all those people there, and this business is no longer there. Could we, at a minimum, maybe Photoshop out table 3 out of the thing just to show? Anyway, that's just a minor pet peeve. But if I was coming to town saying, hey, look at that beautiful setting, let me go have dinner there, and then find out that it's no longer there, might be a bit of a downer. Second comment was, and I kind of agree with Lauren, I'd like to see an expansion on that things to do. We're so proud of our parks and trails that I'd like to see more definition there. Instead of just saying the city parks and trails, sort of subsets, I'd like to see all them sort of annotated and invite to our, and maybe, our community park, our Ward 5 park, our trailheads and so on. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, we've got Councilmember Dodwell and Councilmember McCune. Did I miss anybody else? Okay.
Clark as well.
Excellent work. Just a few commentaries on the city parks and trails. I think we do need to somehow put a link to our website with a listing of all of our parks and trails, or something that will allow people to quickly switch over if they've got this map in front, or this list of things to do in front of them. Where do they need to go to find out details about all of the city parks? I don't know how effective that is on our website. It's been a couple of months since I've been out there, but hopefully that would allow people to easily find a park near where they might be parked at that time and be able to hop into a park somewhere. I like Lauren's idea of reorganizing kind of based upon location. It's a catch-22 though. It could be anything. And then on this document, I think it would be a good idea on the back side of it, even though it's supposed to be a one-page document, if people are going to pick this up, or if this is going to be going out as a mailer potentially, let's put some shots of all the different scenery around Wildwood that we have just in a montage on the back side of the page, so that it looks a little bit more professional than just a blank white page. That was my suggestion.
Okay,
Councilmember McCune?
can you hear me okay? I have an audio
A
problem.
little bit
barely.
louder, please. Barely.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Just speak up.
How about now? Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep, just don't talk any quieter.
Okay, sorry. I really like all the input, and I think this is great. The only thing I was going to add to it is the recreational part. Forest with all the mountain trails and things like that, and that draws a lot of people. Do we want to add any emphasis on that component? And maybe look at a co-sponsorship or something that we can add to help boost that component of Wildwood.
Thank you. There is an excellent Parks and Trail map that I suppose one of the things that we could do is staple this in as a supplement until we could, print something else if there's not a great way to combine this on a reprint, but certainly something that we do want to emphasize. Councilmember Clark?
Yes, on the front page with the verbiage, in addition to the edits that I had sent to Jacqueline, to Julian,
Please restate
I would-
those for the benefit of the council.
I'm sorry,
Would you like to restate those for the benefit of the council since?
the edits, there was just some, I could read it to you, but the whole thing has a few just grammatical and different things like that, it's just insignificant.
Mhm.
But the one thing that I think would we need to add to it that maybe I didn't put in there is it really emphasizes the 11 square miles of the state and county parks in this verbiage, but we don't say anything about our city parks. So maybe we should add that in, that we also have city parks. It looks like as I read this, if I didn't know, I would think that all of our parks are state or county parks.
Okay, good to know. I actually read it as the opposite because it said Wildwood City Park. So I read it as that we didn't have any state or county. So good to hear how different people are interpreting that.
And I think she's referencing the text that's on the website landing page.
Website.
Okay. So let's keep with the printed version. with the motion on the floor, and we'll put a pin in that and come right back to that, Councilmember Clark. Mr. Zunich?
Thank you, ma'am. I would just suggest instead of a trail map being attached to it, we do have the Parks and Recreation app that's available on both Google Play and the App Store at Apple. And that has all of our trails mapped along with an overall representation as well. So maybe we could identify that. They can download it on their phone when they come into town. And once they're done, they can delete it and be done. Thank you.
Oh, I think that is a great idea. It certainly takes up less space when we certainly don't have a lot to work with. Any other editorial comments on this? Okay, so Julian, are you okay with taking these into consideration and then coming back to us with the next meeting? Councilmember Bertolino, do you understand that to be part of your motion, or would you like to? Okay,
Yes.
and that's okay with
No.
the second?
With
All right,
yeah,
to come back for
Come
the
back.
next meeting. Okay, that sounds great. And then it would be my intent as chair and hopefully as a committee that once we get a final version that we will formally refer this to other committees that can use it, such as Celebrate Wildwood, so they can send this as an attachment digitally to anyone that registers Parks and Rec. It may be perhaps any participant in a cycling event or participating in plein air, something like that. So let's see no further discussion. Let's do, I think we can do a voice vote in this. So all in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Excellent. Let's go ahead and move on to the
Thanks for
economic.
your participation, Bear.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Let's go ahead and move on. It's certainly easier when we have an amenable committee because the roll calls are quicker. I apologize. We still have the screen share to move on within this as a second item. So Julian, if you'd like to go over the website version of the tourism campaign.
You got it. Hold on one second. I'll pull it right up. All right. Everybody see that okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So this is a web version of everything that was contained within the printed piece that we just went through. This is the original landing page, which when you input the web address, which you can do as a redirect of just cityofiowa.com/tourism, it brings you to this homepage for the tourism campaign, which includes, as it loads, just a Visit Wildwood graphic at the top of the page. This verbiage that we included on the welcome page, we've used in other locations. If you all recall the professional visitors guide, the trifold document with the trail map and the town center shopping map and those items, this verbiage came from that document, which we've already been distributing. So it's largely not new, but obviously we can always make changes to it. I know Councilwoman Clark had made some editorial changes to it. Back to the September meeting when we were discussing the different components that can go into a tourism campaign website, there were several different categories that were identified: history, events, things to do, food and drink, places to stay. And because we already had that complete finished professional visitors guide, we linked to that as well. So each of these submenus, history, event calendar, things to do, food and drink, places to stay, links to somewhere else on the website. Because there are already several different pages that talk about the city's history, these links take you to those already pre-existing pages. So history goes to the history page. It's already on our website. Historic communities, same thing. Route 66 takes you to a Route 66 website that talks about the segment of the original Route 66. Event calendar links to the Wildwood Parks and Recreation event calendar that has all of our different community events that the city hosts. And then for the three main categories of things to do, food and drink, places to stay, those all directly correlate to the different categories that we included on the printed piece. Each of these submenus on the tourism page are also available on the left sidebar. So that regardless of if you view the website on a desktop platform or on a mobile version, you can definitely find those submenus very easily. Because the website does allow us a little bit more flexibility with adding additional information, the flyer, because it's confined to a certain size page, has restrictions on how much content we can include in that piece. But on the website, because we're not restrained to that same size limitation, we do have the ability to add more information. So under things to do, we do add a few extra items to that listing. I included different categories under the attractions, entertainment, shops, and equestrian activities. I've started also linking each of these. So if you want to go to Hidden Valley, you can click on it and it takes you to that page, as well as address and what different types of activities are provided at each of those locations. Same thing goes for food and drink. This is that same list of restaurants from the flyer that we had provided. I also linked to each of the restaurants with hyperlinks so everybody can click on those and it'll pop out and take you to their website. Places to stay, because the Wildwood Hotel is the only hotel or traditional hotel that we have in town. I also included 3 neighboring hotels in other cities in Eureka, Fenton, and Chesterfield, just in case Wildwood's full if they're looking for something in a different location. It also filled the box a little bit more than just having one hotel under hotels, motels. And then if in case anybody is getting adventurous, I also included 2 camping options at Babbler and Greensfelder, in case people are interested in staying a little bit more rustic as well. As I said, the visitor's guide pops out into a PDF. It's a little bit larger file size, so it might take a second for the PDF to load, but that takes you to the pre-existing visitor's guide document that we had already created. I believe it was about 2 or 3 years ago. I just won't let so as we're talking as a committee of all the different information we like to add to this campaign, as far as additional parks and trails, mountain biking, we can add additional photos or maps or other pieces to it. The website does allow greater flexibility because we're not restrained to that size limitation. So if we would like to add more activities to things to do, identify specific parks and trails by name, link out to other maps or anything else that we'd like to do, we do have that availability here. This website is already live on our website. We published it last week. So anybody at home can go to this link right now and play around on it and find different activities. We did on the printed piece provide a link directly to this website, so anybody that has the flyer can easily punch in that web address and find this information anytime. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions about the content or any edits or changes you all would like to see.
Let me drop this
Or I'll-
screen. Yeah, I can't see anybody that raises their hand. Thank you so much. It's important. I will say that you've done a great job on this. I think generally what I've heard from the committee as a statement is that the more we can add, the better for the website, especially featuring parks and trails. I will say that Julian and I had a discussion earlier about the potential to kind of merge what we've done with multiple maps in different departments. So taking the historic areas of HPC, taking the parks and trails maps, and then pen dotting different local businesses on it, and sort of creating a newer map. So that might be one option as well. My other thought is, because we are in a regionally commercial area in St. Louis County, is it not worth putting a small section, how far we are from St. Louis City, and how far we are from perhaps another commercial area like Chesterfield that does or has, at least pre-COVID, folks even coming from Rolla to shop there, but they don't necessarily want to stay in the area. I'm not sure if it's reasonable to include other drive times, but that's the only other thought I had. Questions, comments, concerns? Well, it's already live, so I think Mr. Vunich.
Just one thought, in keeping with what Julian did for the hotels and motels, maybe we could add the campground down in Eureka, since again, Babbler fills up really, really quick during the summer. Thank you.
Excellent idea. And as you mentioned, with different sports, additional associations could be helpful. You know, I think it would be appropriate to link back to a GORC page, since we are in a contract with them. Since it's already live, there is no necessary motion to approve the page as it exists. So if you would like Julian to bring us an update of any additions for the next meeting, I think that would be appropriate.
Sure. Would you all like to maybe distribute this publicly, social media, e-newsletter now, or wait until after the next meeting when everything's brought back for your review?
I don't see any reason why we can't post it now. These are living documents. And as we add additional things to it, go for it. But I think we've got a great framework. We've got a clear outline of how we're going to place things, et cetera. So I think let it go live, and it becomes a living document resource.
Councilmember Bertolino?
Yeah, excuse my sort of backtracking here, Julian, but on the equestrian facilities, is there some way to put in there that those that offer trail rides for those who want to saddle up and go, go out for the day? And corollary to that is the Ridgefield Arena actually within Wildwood?
It is. It is down Ridge Road in the Wildwood portion of Ridge Road.
Okay. I was thinking it was on the Ellisville side of the road there. So
no, it's immediately next door to Baldwin Ridge Health and Rehab, which by its name you'd be surprised, but yes, it is definitely within the city of Wildwood.
okay, all right, thanks, Julian.
So it sounds like we've got enough done that we're willing to move forward and continue to make editorial changes and additions. My one question is, can we get a permanent banner on the homepage that says Visit Wildwood with a button, rather than something that's in a drop-down menu? Because especially since it's not a separate website, I think it needs to be in front of people. Given the main complaint I had before is there's an entire population of people that don't like to maneuver websites or extensively Google. And I was told it, quote, put it in front of my face.
Right.
I agree with you, Lauren.
I would too.
This committee, I know, has talked for many years about doing something like that to be able to highlight where to go in Wildwood, what to do in Wildwood. So I think we need to have it as a button of some kind in an upper right left corner of the home page somehow, so it stands out a little bit more.
And the older I get, the bigger the button needs to be.
As long as it doesn't go directly to an eject seat. I think
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I think we're okay.
When we were looking for a location for it, there is a drop down, but like we said, it is a drop down in a sub menu. The tourism button is under the residence menu of the homepage, which is not necessarily the greatest place for a tourism button.
No.
It doesn't really fit
No.
under business.
Right.
There
That's-
are on the homepage, we have 6 main buttons on the scrolling screen of images. Those were picked based off what are the most clicked menus on our website. When we did our redesign with Civic Plus now almost 3 years ago, we looked at our analytics to see what were the most frequently visited pages on the city website and picked our top 6 buttons based on that. I do not specifically recall if we can add a 7th button. We can definitely look into that. It just depends on people's devices, how many buttons can fit on a screen without it being too overcrowded. But we can definitely talk to Civic Plus and see if there's an option to add a 7th button to that main page.
That would be most helpful. And even if it's not at the top in a button, if it's just something permanent farther down the page, is that considered a button?
We can add it as a
With a graphic that just is tacked forever. Is that an option? So if they can't do that, let's try that as can be. Councilmember McCune.
So just to add on that, Julian and Chair, are we going to, I'd like to see a monthly update on the traffic on the new site when it goes live, just a monthly update during the economic development, just to see how much traction we get. Is that something that we have to give Civil Plus a notice to say that we're interested in the traffic numbers? Or Chair, do you agree with that? I'd just like to see how much traction we're getting with this, and just an update monthly would be great.
We can look into it. Let me talk to Joe and Kathy. Kathy Arnett is our contact with Civic Plus. She manages our contract with them and knows all the back end analytics of our website. So I know that she has the ability to look at our analytics. I don't remember if we can look at specific subpages or certain time periods, but let me check with her and I can get back to you all.
That would be great. Just the traffic. I think that we would just really want to say the economic development, and Lauren, with your help in this, I think that that's going to be something that would be really good to showcase for what this committee has done.
I think it's a great idea if they can pull the data out like that, because what I really want to know is, does it change post-COVID regulations right before an event when people are coming into town? Or, you know, I certainly used to go to Kirkwood or Webster Groves for events, and, you know, was Googling things in the area. I would be interested to see how it changes in the long run. And when we're happy with this, can we add it to the city e-newsletter as well? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Councilmember McCune. Great idea. Are we ready to move on? Okay, all right. Julian, would you please take it away with our second ready for action item?
I will. Thank you, Chair Edens and members of the committee. This item pertains to the city's economic development guide. Hopefully all of you in your time on council have obtained a copy of this document. It is a printed and bound version called the Economic Development Guide. I hope and I believe that when each of you started on council, we provided printed and bound copies to each of you. I know Councilmember Jaxie, when he joined, I put one in his mailbox last week, so hopefully he has his as well. And I know Joe for sure, but also Councilmembers Dodwell and Bertolino can fill in the gaps prior to my arrival. But this document, the Economic Development Guide, kind of acts as a strategic plan and a blueprint for this program. When this standing committee had previously been a task force prior to 2015, that task force engaged Housley Levine and Associates out of Chicago to work to pull together this guide. That was at the same time that the city was going through its 10-year master plan update process, which was adopted in 2016. So simultaneously as the city updating its master plan, and at that time creating a brand new element within that plan for economic development, the city contracted with Housley Levine and Associates to develop this strategic plan document for this new economic development program. With the help of this document and that task force was converted to a new standing committee of the city council in 2016. And this program was created, and my position was created at that same time in the middle towards the end of 2016. All that is a long way of saying this document was an initial resource to use to create this program from the onset. It identified the city's opportunities, it identified many of the city's challenges, places and opportunities for growth, some of the initial recommended activities and actions that the city should implement to create this program in 2016. So it did identify a lot of those activities to create this program from that beginning point of time. Within the document, there's lots of locations where it identifies reasons for growth and opportunities for growth. It does identify some of the city's negative assets. I say that because it just identifies some of our challenges, maybe some of our negative perception that we've received from business community or from the development community. So there are some positives and some negatives, but largely it just paints a picture of where the city was at that point in time 5 years ago. But within that document, we've talked about this over the last few years. There is a chapter towards the end, chapter 6, called implementation, that identifies really how we as a city should use this document on a daily and annual basis. And within that chapter, there is a piece which identifies us to update the guide on a regular basis. And as part of that update, it says, in addition to annual updates, this plan is produced with a 5-year structure, and it should be thoroughly evaluated after 3 years with an anticipation of a total update in 2021. We are in 2021. This is our first committee meeting of 2021. We've been discussing this document for now the last 2 years, since that initial 3-year period, talking about how we as a committee should approach this update once we get to that point in time. The document was produced with a 5-year structure to get us to this point. I think most plans, like our master plan or town center plan, are usually created with a 10-year structure. This document was produced with a 5-year structure. My goal, and the memo I provided everybody as part of the packet tonight, my request to you all as the committee is to identify a potential format and instruction to us for how we should undertake this update. Within the memo identified some of the different components that should go in or could go into that update as far as how we would like to, as a committee, space out a review of each of the 6 chapters within it. Also, when the guide was initially completed in 2016, the city engaged a group of 25 stakeholders made up of residents, property owners, business owners, development entities to kind of act as the public input provided as part of that document. So how would we want to re-engage the public, whether through stakeholders or a survey, for a current snapshot of the community requests and activity for this purpose? And then how we would like to schedule out the updates both to this committee and eventually with presentation and hopefully approval by council. This guide was adopted by council by ordinance in May of 2016. So talking to Chair Edens earlier, we would like to make sure that this guide, once updated, is represented to council for their review and comment as well, and hopefully approval by ordinance as well to update and adopt that amended copy. 3 things that might impact this. We talked about it beforehand, but we want to make sure that this update can be completely done in-house. This guide was initially developed by an outside consultant that the city paid to do this work. I think now that the guide has been developed and implemented, we here at the city can update it ourselves without the need of an outside party. I think that we should discuss and identify, because we're in January now and there's an election in April, can we start the review and update process now, or should we wait until after the election when potentially new committee members are seated? We want to make sure that as the city council is currently undertaking a strategic planning process itself, looking at our goals and sub-goals and priorities for the next 5 years, that we as this committee make sure that our goals for this document align with the goals that the city council is identifying. And then lastly, the census data that'll soon be coming out. We just finished the 2020 10-year census. That data should be coming out in March, April-ish. We want to make sure that as we update this guide to reflect current data, that we make sure to use that newest, latest, and greatest 2020 census data. So all those impact the timeline. We just want to have a discussion by the council and some instruction so that we know from you all what type of activities you would like to be included in this update, so that we as a team and us as your staff can draft a schedule of events and activities that we can bring back to the February meeting to lay out what that review and update period will be for this next year. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
My understanding with talking with you is that you would prefer it to be a 10-year plan in the future. Is that correct? Okay, so that you might want to roll that in for a motion for whoever would like to make that. And my understanding is that you would like to come back next month with a proposed schedule if that's what the committee supports. Is that correct? Okay. Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, thank you for that summary, Julian. That was excellent. Appreciate that. My thought on this at this juncture is that every other major document that we are guided by on the council has a public participation review process through an ad hoc committee of citizens. And I think that we are at that point in time with our economic development efforts that it's time to have a public participation in terms of an ad hoc committee that reviews the document, looks at what we've done, helps us set some guidelines for the future. So I would like to recommend, I'm not making a motion, I just want discussion purposes. I'd like to recommend that we consider a citizens committee, much like we have for the charter review and we have for the other events, parks and plannings and so on, to review this document. Thank you.
Councilmember Dodwell.
To table on to what Councilmember Bertolino just said, I think it would behoove us, having gotten the prior analysis done by an outside firm who, in prior discussions with Julie and myself, we looked at that document and a lot of it's just cookie cutter stuff. They didn't even have some of the text referring to the city of Wildwood. It looked like some of it may have been pulled from another project they'd been working on. So before we get citizens involved for their input, I'd like this committee to be able to put together, with Julian's extensive guidance, the initial layout and components that are going to go into the document so that we have a framework for those citizens to work with that is something we as a committee would like to present to the public in general, if that makes sense. And I'm also wondering if it might not be a bad idea at the next meeting to do, or each of us come back with a SWOT, our own SWOT analysis or SWOT analysis, however you want to pronounce it. Maybe we can turn that in before the next meeting and we can combine that all together so that we can start with a valid discussion of here's our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and we can come to a set of goals that we have for this document and for what we want economic development to do, so that when we bring in the ad hoc committee, which I think is very important, we have some structure around their discussions, and we can get their feedback more quickly, I think, than if we just said, so what do you think we ought to do with our economic development stuff? I think that kind of a dialogue process would take us much longer through this. In our other committees where we're doing a review, we have brought in our current documents and then had individuals from the ad hoc committee review them. But I think we still have a little bit more work. Then my other question is, do you think that the 6 chapters are still warranted, Julian, or do you think we might have a different framework for this document going forward?
I think there's definitely a potential for a new framework. The initial document that was drafted in 2016 was done without a program in place or staff in place. It was used to instruct the city how to create this program. Most of the action steps, and I have it hanging on my wall, is develop this, establish that, create that. We've done that. Most of our activity in the last 4 years has been creating this program. Now that it's created, I think our approach pivots to developing and establishing to implementing and ensuring success. So the 6 chapters we had beforehand, while were very important at that time, I don't think we necessarily need to follow that same framework. We're not necessarily going to start over, but I think we should evaluate the document with a fresh set of eyes, thinking we've been doing this for 5 years now. What do we need to do to make sure that this program, this document is successful? And I think also to both of your points, Councilmember Dodwell and Bertolino, is that some public input and involvement is monumental in that. We've been in the last now 5 years, there's been a heavy amount of public input and engagement on many different recent plans, surveys, efforts. In 2016, with the development of this document, the city also did a citywide survey for the master plan update, both to residents and business owners. 2 years later, in 2018, when the city created its own ad hoc Manchester Improvement Committee, we surveyed every immediate stakeholder on Old Manchester Road, their input, as well as a citywide survey amongst all residents of Wildwood for their input as well. Within the last now year and a half, we've done additional citywide surveying for the Village Green twice, and the Town Center Update Team's recommendations as well. So we've done a fair amount of citywide surveying in the last couple of years. Some of those specifically pertain to this program, a lot of them didn't. The public input we used, or the city used last time, development of the guide, was by a group of those stakeholders, those 25 stakeholders that sort of acted as that citizen committee. It wasn't an established ad hoc commission. It was an informal group of stakeholders that were grouped together based off their field and their knowledge of the city and this potential program. So I think in potentially creating that group of stakeholders for use in this update, we could receive a lot of that public input for their future goals for the city, and also maybe what the important pieces are to hit on in the document. Like we said, are the 6 chapters important? What efforts are most important now? I think we can use that group of stakeholders to accomplish that.
Well, and just from a business standpoint, I'd be interested in knowing what are the goals of some of our key business stakeholders. Where do they see their business going? What are their business efforts in the coming years? And how can the city help support that in conjunction with their efforts so that we don't go off one direction and they want us to go a different direction, or would hope that we would. I don't think we know what our business people in the city of Wildwood, I'll take that back. You probably know, Julian. I personally don't know what all of our business goals are across the community. And so I think that's something that we need to gather as part of this process through an ad hoc committee, so that we can understand if their goals are this, what can the city do to help them attain those goals so that it's a win-win for both of us. Sorry, I'm taking the floor here. I apologize.
That's all right. I'll make one comment and hand it over to Councilmember Galani. My recommendation would be to continue with the same stakeholder process as before, rather than an ad hoc committee. We can always have a public hearing or provide additional opportunities for public comments. If it's a traditional public that would be invited, I think you're going to get a lot more of, I would like to see X type of shop, which has already been surveyed, versus I'm a potential developer, I work in the area, here's the barriers that I identify and how they have changed in the last couple of years. So my preference would not necessarily would be to add another committee for review. That's my 2 cents. Councilmember Galani.
Yeah, no, thank you. So what I was going to say, a couple things. First, Julian, I mean, you've done a remarkable job in your position as the economic development manager. I think everybody can agree to that. And so I think you're very passionate and you've got a great grip on the pulse of the city with the business owners and what's going on, who's trying to come in, who's asking for what. So that's one of the things that I've noticed in my relatively short time here. But what I would advocate, especially since, like you mentioned a little bit ago, that you would think that we should probably make a new outline of what that looks like for that plan. I would be interested in if you could possibly maybe put together a matrix of an outline, or what you would vision or foresee that needing to look like, and kind of just a breakdown of the different components, the different steps, i.e. chapters perhaps, or if it's just a different approach, and utilizing the information you've gathered from all the folks that you talk to on a constant basis and what you've seen transpire over the last 4 years that you've been there, and what you would like to see continuing on in your position, what your vision is for the progression of the city economically. And then if you could put that in an outline for us, then I think we can put our brains together on this committee and talk through those points. And maybe it's something that takes place over the course of many months and meetings, where we address maybe one component of the outline each time, similar to what we're doing in the council for the master plan. And then we can kind of whittle it down to the most prioritized pieces of that need to go in there, and the subsets and everything, and put it together that way. So, I mean, I would think that would probably, as far as I can tell, would make the most sense, having you kind of be the driver, since you're really the heartbeat of what's happening economically within the city and all that. So that would be my I guess, how I feel on that piece. And then the timeline that you talked about on whether we should wait until after the election, I think it's something that we can start working on right away, and it's going to take some time. I mean, we've got to get it done this year. So, I mean, it sounds like a long time, but it's going to go by pretty quick, especially when we only meet once a month. So we could start meeting, and then I would imagine that we probably wouldn't be ready to take it to council or put something forward until later in the summer or fall anyway. So those folks that would be newly elected, I think then folks that are on the committee now that might not be in the future, as well as the new people that will come to the committee, will all have an opportunity to have input into what's going into that. And then as far as public participation, I think what we could do is perhaps once we get a little bit further into the process and have a pseudo outline draft and some components, then perhaps maybe we can do a roundtable as one of our meetings 1 month and invite the public to come there, where they can make comments and suggestions on some type of draft we already have in place. Because my fear is that if we invite the public into this on the front end, you're just going to have all kinds of ideas coming out of left field, and there's just however many people participate is how many different suggestions you're going to have. So maybe once we get a little bit further to where we have some bullet points of what's going to go in there, then we can kind of have people focus in on giving us feedback on specific things and their thoughts accordingly. So sorry for the long
No,
response, but
Councilmember
just-
Galani, don't apologize, but I'm going to encourage you to put a motion on the floor to have Julian come back with a timeline for the 10-year review of the, editorially changing it to 10-year review of the Economic Development Guide to be started on with the current committee members. Essentially, everything that was under number 2 is what I heard you say. Is that okay? Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
Be happy to.
Okay. Can we get a second? Seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. Any debate on the motion? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
I think 10 years is too far away for economic development. I think we need to reassess after 5 years, but I want to get everybody else's thoughts on that.
I was yielding to Julian's recommendation for 10 years. However,
does that work better, Julian, is 10 years?
I selected 10 years because that's the standard and planning practice for our master plan, our town center plan.
Okay.
I did tell Chair Edens that our city council strategic plan is a 5-year period. As council changes every 4 years and 8 years. I think we could establish a document with a 5-year review period. And if there are no reviews at 5 years, then it's an update at 10. So that way we kind of accomplish both.
I just like the flexibility of being able to adjust it as need be.
Some sort of hybrid solution. Okay, so without objection, can that be rolled into the original motion? Okay. Permission.
So it's 5 years instead of 10.
A working 5-year document with a potential for 10-year deferral, if I understood correctly. Is that adequate? Okay, and my thought too, in general, is let's have Julian kind of come back with what he identifies as needing updated and changed, and then if we want to have a discussion on what we feel should be added as a strength or weakness, I think it would be appropriate then let Julian do the work on the front end before we send a lot of emails with additional points, I think. But certainly we'll probably have things to add. So any further discussion before we take a vote with the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Fabulous. Moving right along. Did anybody have any questions? It didn't sound, there were no questions on the matrix. So I just want to confirm that.
I can introduce it real quick if
Yeah,
you'd like.
that would be good. Okay.
Thank you, Chair Edens, members of the committee. The last item that we identified for action tonight is more just for your own acceptance and filing more than any specific action on the document itself. We were requested at the last committee meeting in November. We were going over the monthly manager's report, and there was some extensive discussion on additional graphics or additional information that can help further display the information we provide each month in our manager's report regarding specific activities, business happenings, special programming, to just make this data a little bit more graphic in nature than just text on a page. And so speaking with several council members on this committee and Chair Edens, we wanted to provide some type of a document to respond to that request. We did combine two different requests from the last meeting into this one item. The first is a year in review, which we use to create a matrix based off a lot of the information that was provided over 2020 with new businesses that are opening, businesses that are already existing but that are expanding or relocating, looking at them on a calendar scale, looking at them from January to December. How long did each item take? How long did it take for a new business to open? How long did it take for an existing business to expand? Just on that calendar graphic, looking at the different months of the year, how long it took for certain activities to take place. Not necessarily to see when there's a higher or more frequent level of activity, but just to show how those different business activities are laid out throughout the year so you can see how long it takes for each business to open or expand within the community. That was the first item. We grouped them together because I think there was some similarity between the two. The second item was a list of committee ideas. From the minutes in the last meeting, and at the very end of the last meeting in November, there was a discussion from Chair Edens that said that we were going to look at and pull together a list of all the different ideas, programming that the Economic Development Committee has proposed over the last 4 years. As potential committee members come and go and new council members are elected, we all come together in this meeting and talk about what we can do for this city and for this program. But the request was made to pull together a list of what ideas have already been proposed over these last 4 years so that we know what's been proposed in the past and that we don't try to recreate the wheel or reinvent the wheel. Both of those matrices were provided within this attachment. The first one we've already identified, and then the second one on the last page of the document broke them down based off completed, in progress, those that are on hold mainly due to COVID or reasons such as it, and then future efforts, some that have been discussed but never really pursued directly. Speaking with Chair Edens this afternoon, there were two that were not included and probably should be that we've done in the last year, one of which being at the end of last year, the new veterans programming, the assistance we provided to small businesses that are either veteran owned or employ veterans. And then also, as we've talked about tonight already, the new tourism campaign. That we can add to this table to show those efforts that were developed by this committee that have either been completed or in progress right now. Just so that you all as a committee going forward in your jobs as committee members and council members know those projects, know those programs that have already been recommended in the past by this group that we can use to either make decisions going forward or just help you know what programs we've already developed or talked about in the past. As I mentioned previously, this is not any specific action that we're requesting this evening. This is just a document that we discussed at the last meeting in November, some requests that were made by council members for additional information, and also something that Chair Edens mentioned that we wanted to pull together for this meeting. Not seeking any action, but wanted the chance to provide this for everybody, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for Julian on either page?
A good resource to hang around with us so that we stay on top of what needs to come up in the following years.
Thank you for that. All right, seeing no further discussion, we've got a for information item.
Correct.
Julian?
And so this, thank you. Thank you, Chair Edens, members of the committee. This is my monthly manager's report. I think prior, I'd say maybe over a year and a half ago, most of these items were presented for the first time in this report. So usually these were very new topics and new announcements that most people on this group hadn't heard of or seen them before. With the inception of the weekly city administrators report, most of these items show up in your inbox on Fridays. So I think most of these announcements shouldn't be too big of surprises to you. But I know that there are many different activities going on right now with existing businesses that are expanding and several others that are either opening or are under contract to lease or buy potential buildings here in town. Hopefully most of you know many of these announcements already. If you have a specific question on any specific item or business, I'm happy to go into further detail about it. There are a few that are very close to being finished that are not yet public and are not yet completed that I can't go into too much great detail on. If I reference a new user, a new professional user, something like that, we can't really disclose too much outside of that. But just for your all benefit of what the different activities are that's occurring. The only note I did want to make that we did bring up at the last meeting in November is that we've expanded this report to add some additional graphics. If you look at the third page of the report, we're keeping a little chart or a little graph tally of the metrics of this past month's activity of new businesses that have opened, businesses that have expanded or reinvested, any that have closed, what that impact is on our business inventory, both for this month and then going forward for the year to date, and then comparing that to those numbers from 2020 so that you can see what this month's of activity has done both for this year in comparison to last year. And then the last page has two different charts on it. The first one, which is retail office vacancy rates, was provided at last month's meeting. Those figures have not changed from 2016 to 2020. Those figures are still accurate. But for everybody's benefit, and it doesn't look, looks like Joe already dropped off, but Joe Vunich did request to us in November that we add another table that shows the trends in unemployment rates. He specifically asked last month, knowing that our city unemployment rate, which is now as of November, is down to 2.7%, which is back down to pre-COVID rate, is pretty phenomenal for the city. But to show how the city's unemployment rate has progressed pre-COVID, at the peak of COVID, and now shortly longer into COVID, compared to those rates for national and the St. Louis MSA, is just great to see how the city's held up during that time period. So we'll continue to include those tables in monthly reports going forward. It just helps better portray the information rather than just text on a page. It's for information. There's no action requested, but I'm happy to answer any questions on it.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, thank you, Julian, and excuse me for being an old curmudgeon on this issue, but what you're seeing here from Julian, think back prior to 16, the council was totally blind as to what was going on in the business community within Wildwood. We had no information, zero, except for what occasionally the mayor at the time might want to share with us about his discussions with certain people. So I apologize for being, say, the old curmudgeon of the group, but Julian has done such a fabulous job over the last few years of opening our eyes and getting us a window into the activities of our businesses in Wildwood. And what we're seeing today is a 1,000% improvement over what we had just a few years ago. Thanks.
Councilmember Dodwell.
I would like to echo that as well. I'm hearing from different businesses throughout the city of Wildwood. Prior to Julian coming on board, they didn't feel like anybody in Wildwood cared that they were even a business here in the city. And they feel appreciated. They feel they have a partner. They feel the city is now partnering with them through all of the work that Julian's done. So I think that's an excellent way for a city to provide its own internal growth and support for its citizenry. And I just want to thank Julian and all the members of this committee who have helped support him in his efforts, and also gone out and made personal calls out to different businesses. I know I have at different times just to see how things are going for different businesses. I know probably each of you, when you stop in a business, have said, how are things going? What can we do to help? So it's a group effort to make a community a success, if I could say that word effectively. And so I just want to thank Julian for the guidance and his work going through this process and teaching the council and our citizens what economic development really is.
Well, I also appreciate this committee forwarding on this onto council for work session updates as well, because I think what we've seen is that members of the committee know about economic development's efforts, and then that's where it ended before. So it's good that we have a full council that's educated. Councilmember Clark, I saw your hand go up and then it disappeared. Do you have a comment?
I do. I'm struggling tonight with some internet issues, but you know, I am in Ward 1. So, yeah, I just wanted to echo, you know, I don't want to take a long time to do this, but I just really wanted to let you know, Julian, how much we appreciate what you are doing and the time that you spend and the knowledge that you have on how to put this stuff together so that it's easy for us to understand, because it's not so easy for me to understand the economic development part. And this makes it very easy. And my internet was gone when we were first going through things. And I just wanted to tell you that on the website issue, not many cities have that. Not many cities have what you have given to us. And it's very, very professional looking. I just want to tell you that we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
In summing it up, we appreciate you. Thanks again, Julian, for all of your hard work. There are no items that are not ready for action. However, I do know that we have one council member that would like to bring up a topic under miscellaneous items. But first I'll ask, Julian, do we have anything for other business news and updates?
I did not. I do not believe so, no.
Okay, all right, Councilmember McKeon, you have the floor.
So I don't know if this is, if we can talk about it now or not, but maybe Mr. Vunich can fill in. So in the next committee meeting that's getting ready to join, there's an agenda item on there about tax related for the parks and planning. But the way that that tax can be, I guess they're going to explore those options, is that based on the sales tax aspect, I think that that kind of overlaps with economic development. And I maybe ask for that agenda item to follow up to what results into this next meeting from the discussions, if it evolves into something else. But I think to kind of monitor that to see if that would affect the businesses as far as that discussion goes, or, you know, is that the right route, a sales tax base, because it could affect the small businesses if that is initiated and passed by council, you know, which is not going to happen overnight. But I just think that economic development should maybe have a discussion too and have some influence if that does proceed further, just from the business aspect. So
I think that would be appropriate. Perhaps Julian could produce a memo to the effect. And just so you're aware, anyone that's not on watershed erosion discussed it first and then sent it to planning and parks more or less. And if I believe that the final goal now would be to make it a ballot initiative in November, specifically with more funds going towards watershed, part of it towards parks, and then over time, more of an equal distribution of how those funds are split between those two different needs.
yeah, and I just think that when they do talk about it, as you said, it's kind of been kicked over to this the other committee now, is that it does kind of overflow with economic development and the protection of the businesses. So if this does go into a sales tax base, if that's what they want to do, or could it be a utility tax, which is more spread out and it wouldn't affect the businesses as much. So I think that maybe we need to have some overlap or some discussions on this committee as well. So, you know, Julian's very diverse in all this kind of tax stuff and everything. So I have confidence that he'll oversee it, but I would just, as chair, maybe we overlap as well and just kind of monitor the situation.
I think that's appropriate, and I'll make sure it's on the next agenda for review.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you bringing it up. I think some of us that are on watershed, we've about talked it to death. So I think it's easy to forget that it hasn't been talked about in every committee where it's relevant. So thanks for bringing that up. Any other miscellaneous items? Any ideas? Oh, Councilmember Berlino?
No, thank you. I'll talk to Joe later. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So please note the next meeting date is also another earlier start time with a double header as well. And so with that, I will entertain a motion to close. Made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember McCune, non-debatable. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstain? All right. Well, have a great evening and have a productive, yes, have a productive parks meeting.